Railways are often underestimated in modern warfare. But on August 19, 2025, a single stretch of track became the focal point of a high-stakes battle over fuel, logistics, and strategic reach. Ukraine waited patiently, monitoring signals, mapping movement, and watching patterns before launching a strike that didn't just destroy a Russian fuel train, but severed a critical supply artery to Crimea for nearly a week. What followed was not brute force, but a textbook logistics ambush built on intelligence layering, unmanned systems, and precise timing. It was a reminder that modern war is increasingly decided not by surveillance, data fusion, and the ability to disrupt supply chains at exactly the right moment. At 8:01 a.m. on August 19th, a Russian fuel train made its southbound run toward Crimea. The convoy consisted of 30 tanker wagons carrying desperately needed fuel. By this stage of the war, Russia had few options left. Road convoys were routinely intercepted and destroyed. Maritime routes had become unsafe due to Ukrainian naval drones. Rail transport had become Moscow's only reliable method to move large volumes of fuel. That reliance created a single point of failure, and Ukraine was ready to exploit it. The train crew remained unaware they were already being tracked. From above and from the ground, Ukrainian intelligence systems had locked onto the train's movement. Telemetry, speed, and routing data were analyzed in real time. The target wasn't the locomotive or armored components. It was the volatile cargo inside. Ukraine's preparation was meticulous. Operating in an area where drone visibility was limited, Kyiv established a layered intelligence architecture designed to overcome Russian electronic warfare. Signal strength was deliberately concentrated along the corridor, allowing guided drone operations even under jamming conditions. The intelligence network fused multiple data streams: optical and thermal satellite imagery, commercial synthetic aperture radar, electromagnetic reflection analysis, ground-based listening devices, and intercepted signal traffic. Together, these inputs produced a hybrid intelligence map capable of identifying, tracking, and predicting Russian logistics movements with near-minute accuracy. By cross-referencing optical imagery with thermal signatures and radar overlays, Ukrainian operators were able to see through camouflage and electronic interference. Station-level GSM traffic was intercepted. Locomotive telemetry was captured. From this, Ukraine identified the train's precise route, speed, and timing window. Secondary logistics schedules were analyzed to confirm the passage window to within minutes. The interception point was selected with care. UAVs were then deployed in 3 coordinated layers: a forward targeting element, a primary dive strike wave, and a third echelon dedicated to signal reinforcement and post-strike disruption. The weapon of choice was the Malik V-2, an upgraded kamikaze drone engineered to withstand extreme heat and structural stress. Each Malik V-2 had a range of 210 kilometers, dual navigation capability using both GPS and GLONASS, and encrypted AES-128 data links. A satellite-based recall algorithm allowed last-second rerouting if required. Each drone weighed approximately 5 kilograms and carried a low-density explosive charge. It wasn't designed to destroy armored targets directly. Instead, it was optimized to penetrate tanker walls and trigger fuel ignition, generating a shockwave traveling at nearly 9,000 meters per second. The intent was simple: turn the fuel itself into the weapon. Ukraine classified the tankers as self-igniting targets. The drones merely initiated the reaction. The true destructive force came from the fuel load, allowing a relatively small number of munitions to create exponentially larger damage. The timing was precise. Only 2 rail movements were expected that morning. A civilian cargo convoy had cleared the line before dawn. The second was the fuel train. Departing from the Tokmak Regional Control Center, the train headed south toward Oroy. It carried roughly 150 tons of liquid fuel. The first 6 wagons contained aviation fuel. The next 12 carried diesel. The remaining 12 held blended industrial fuels. At the front was a TE-33, a diesel locomotive capable of 100 kilometers per hour and producing 3,300 horsepower, turning the train into a massive kinetic system in motion. The strike began as the convoy entered one of the most congested and difficult-to-access sections of track, limiting Russia's ability to respond. The first Malik V-2 drone struck the 14th wagon, a diesel tanker. The explosive penetrated low into the car. Internal pressure surged, and within seconds, diesel vapors ignited. Flames erupted. 7 seconds later, the adjacent 13th wagon carrying aviation fuel detonated violently, triggering the first chain reaction. A second wave of drones slammed into the 16th and 17th wagons toward the rear. The resulting blast amplified heat and shock effects, tearing the train into 2 sections. The front 13 wagons derailed and ground to a halt. The rear 17 remained on the rails but were quickly consumed by fire. Temperature surged. Concrete sleepers beneath the tracks began to crack. At 620 degrees Celsius, steel rails lost structural integrity and bent under thermal stress. The third drone wave struck the 4th wagon, another aviation fuel container. The explosion displaced the locomotive itself, lifting its front wheels set off the rails. And the situation was about to get far worse. The locomotive's engine compartment bulged outward under extreme pressure. From first impact to final detonation, the entire strike unfolded in just 6 minutes and 48 seconds. 7 drones were employed, each executing a single precision-guided strike. When the flames finally settled, over 312 meters of railway had been physically destroyed.
Confirmation followed quickly. Ukraine's armed forces released an official statement, and by that afternoon, attack footage was circulating across international media. The video showed towering fireballs, warped steel, and massive smoke columns rising into the sky. For the first 90 seconds, the area was consumed by fire, with flame pillars reaching 27 meters high. Within 3 minutes, the blaze had spread across nearly 200 meters of track, deforming roughly 40% of the steel rails. Dry vegetation surrounding the railway ignited, triggering multiple secondary fires. The fire spread not laterally, but vertically and downward. Vaporized fuel created pressurized flame jets that drooped and funneled heat along the track bed, intensifying destruction. The Malik V-2 drones were not only strike weapons, they also served as reconnaissance platforms. Each carried a low-resolution thermal camera in its nose section, transmitting real-time thermal imagery back to Ukrainian operators. This allowed immediate post-strike assessment, including confirmation of which wagons had been fully neutralized. A follow-up strike was technically possible, but unnecessary. After transmitting their data, the drones self-destructed, preventing capture or reverse engineering. The attack also crippled Russian communications. Electromagnetic interference generated during the strike caused a complete blackout in the area for nearly 10 minutes. Security units assigned to protect the train were unable to contact Logistics Command until 12 minutes after the first explosion. This communications collapse compounded the physical damage, paralyzing any coordinated response during the most critical window. Firefighting efforts were delayed. The first civilian fire trucks dispatched from Tokmak were forced to halt more than 1 kilometer away due to extreme heat. Only specialized military fire control vehicles were able to approach the site, arriving nearly 1 hour later. By then, all wagons carrying diesel and aviation fuel had been completely consumed. The fire burned for nearly 3 hours before subsiding, leaving behind at least 6 secondary blazes caused by flaming debris. Damage assessments revealed that rail steel normally rated at 540 to 620 megapascals in tensile strength had lost nearly 40% of its integrity after exposure to temperatures exceeding 750 degrees Celsius. The rails were beyond repair and required full replacement. At least 400 meters of track were deemed permanently unusable. Concrete foundations beneath the rails were also compromised, suffering a 12% structural degradation from thermal shock. Signaling cables melted entirely, requiring a minimum of 4 days to restore communications. In reality, the line remained closed for 6 full days. The immediate operational impact was severe. Russia's primary fuel supply artery into Crimea was cut. Road convoys could meet only 17% of daily fuel requirements, far below what was needed to sustain operations. The destroyed train carried 150 tons of fuel, enough to power a mechanized division for 3 to 5 days. 6 wagons of JP-8 aviation fuel alone represented more than 100 potential helicopter sorties. Their loss meant grounded aircraft, canceled missions, and reduced air support across the front.